Jessica Alstrom, spiritual teacher, medical intuitive, and quantum integration specialist, answers your spiritual questions and assists you through understanding your personal process while providing tools and techniques to move swiftly through the journey back to light.
Hello and welcome to the Transcendence Podcast. This is your host, Jessica Alstrom, and today I'm going to do a podcast called Wound Mates versus Soulmates. And the podcast is going to be more about wound mates because probably about 85% of the population is in relationships with the wound mates. And what is a wound mate? A wound mate is a reflection of your greatest wounds buried underneath the surface projected into an attraction and in a relationship. And I decided to do this podcast because we are in our second week of sexuality and intimacy in our Transcendence International Consciousness Academy group forum that I am teaching internationally right now. And it's funny how it kind of just all came to be because the way that I teach is, I tap into the pulse of collective consciousness and see what globally we are working through as people, as we are rising above, the shadow aspects of ourselves, and as we rise above the conflict with our own minds and with each other, and as we search for enlightenment and we search for spiritual development, what we are realizing is that 90%, 95% of the war that's going on is really about the war with ourselves. And the best way to see the war within ourselves is to project it out into another person. And so over the next basically 10 weeks, I'm going to be taking our international students and our home-based students in person and online through the deepest parts of our intimacy, wounding, and our sexuality, and basically the energy of the sacral chakra. And what that is basically the chakra that represents creativity. It represents the birthing process of creativity. It is the house of sexuality and power that is pushed onto another or is received from another. And so it isn't our most loving center, it's our most creative center. It is where passion ignites and where deep levels of attraction and desire are birthed and housed. And so collectively, we are working through global control issues, global passionate issues, global creativity. And as we had our shift in 2012, what that began was the deep seasoning and clearing of the root chakra. And what people were noticing when 2012 hit was they started to remember. And if you look at the roots of a tree, it's literally like the roots is where everything begins. It's the survival instincts. It's your childhood. It's freedom. It's abundance. It's all of these things that we're constantly in the search and seeking. And as we've been processing through root issues from the last 4 or 5 years, we have cleansed a lot of our silly survival issues, and we're moving more into the clearing of creation. And as the world moves back into alignment with itself, there's going to be, an uncluttering and a clearing and a uprooting and the chaos theory. But all of this is good because everything needs to come to light. And as I've been teaching these classes the last couple of weeks, I've decided to not put an outline together, but just really intuit and, give the class where and what they need in the moment that they need it. And so just to reflect a little bit about why I'm doing this podcast is I have several people that I see on a weekly basis that are not involved in my academy. They're just my life coaching clients. And ironically, they are going through the exact same issues as every single person in the class. So I decided to do a podcast for anyone else who is out there who is probably processing the same energy and emotions right now. And I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of a awareness and a higher perspective of everything that you're clearing at a subconscious, intuitive level right now, and to try to help you make sense of what's going on. And first I want to throw out this, disclaimer that it's not when you get cut that is painful. It's when you begin to heal. And the healing process is what most people are afraid of. That's where we've built all of our walls, and we've closed off our vulnerability, and we've closed down our hearts. And even though we've closed down our hearts, desire is something that always is very penetrating in our lives. It's never going to go away unless we try to numb it out somehow. And so if we're really going to understand the difference between wound mates and soulmates, we really have to understand why we would even find ourselves in a wound mate situation. How does this unfold? How does this work? And for me to explain this properly, we've got to go deep into psychology and unconscious behavior. And when I'm talking about unconscious behavior, I'm talking about when the mind and the body really develop ideas and belief systems that it becomes a very loud vibration for the universe to hear. And if we know that the collaboration between mind, body, and soul is the ultimate freedom and expression of love, then we also know that when these three parts are disconnected from each other, then, the mind and the body have its agenda and the soul has its agenda, and that's what creates the conflict. And so to understand how we would even attract a wound mate, we have to understand that where we developed what love actually was. And, we came to the planet and all we were was love. There was no loving you and you loving me. We were just love. We were just the state of being of pure positive energy, radiating purity and gentleness and stillness and and seeking. And that's basically what we come down as. And so the first 7 years, we're banging around, downloading, observing, and analyzing what this stuff called human love is. And so we know we're love, but those around us don't know that they are love. And so we begin to watch and mimic them because we are society-based, community-based beings, which means that power of influence is very, very strong. So if we come down as knowing we are love and witness the closest people in our lives forgetting that they are love, which means they're demonstrating out of alignment behavior when it comes to love, then by the 7th year, we have decided and downloaded in our belief systems that that is what love is, which means that how they have shown us, treated us, and how we've been allowed to treat ourselves and treat others dictates how we move into love being outside of us. So a perfect example would be, a little empath is born into a family of maybe 2 parents that are not connected with self-love. And so they're watching and observing this and immediately beginning to have conflict with that because it is something that's going against the very grain of who they are. Yet our sole intention of coming down and having this incarnation is to express and be love. And so we realize that very early on that the way we're expressing and being love contradicts what we're seeing around ourselves. So we begin to download other personality traits. And as empaths, we can feel a lot more than what people say. We can feel the stories that are running underneath at a subconscious level. We can feel feelings that others don't even know they're feeling. And so what we do is we begin to listen to what our parents or our people who are taking care of us, we listen to what they say, we watch their behavior, we feel their energy, and we begin to mix that with our own natural state of being, and we develop a altered, arbitrary idea of ourselves. And so a perfect example would be is if I came down and I chose a dad who was emotionally unavailable. Then for the first 7 years, I wanted to be seen and heard by him, and I tried everything, and I was empathetic, so I had compassion and maybe even, worry for his situation, and then tried to love him even more because I could see that he wasn't loving himself. And so what I was doing is I was creating a losing battle for myself already before my first 7-year cycle was over. And maybe you watched mom, have really low self-esteem. And so you were empathetic to that. And anything you're empathetic to that you're not really cause over and you're not really maintaining from a very high place of awareness, you are going to download that behavior as well. Because you are a conscious being. You're like, if you've noticed a child, as soon as they turn 2, they start repeating everything you say. Well, they also start repeating your patterns, your behavior, start to pick up the things. If you've noticed, your children will demonstrate how you feel inside. So if you're angry on the inside, they will project anger on the outside for you so that they can show you what it is that they're feeling that you're not allowing yourself to feel. And as our children, we are growing into our inner conflict immediately, because we came down with a specific intention to love and be loved. And already for the first few years, it changes drastically. You go from this perfect baby that can do not much for itself and you're taken care of and loved to, another baby coming into the picture, and now you feel kind of in that neglected place, or maybe dad leaves, or maybe, some sort of abuse occurs, and an abused child will think that abuse is love, because there is no judgment those first few years. Dad's behavior is just dad's behavior. They're not in judgment of dad's behavior. They're just saying, well, that's just my dad. And so what happens is we develop these wounds, these core wounds that I've talked about in my other podcasts. And the core wounds are not being seen, not being heard, not feeling loved or not feeling lovable, and not feeling nurtured or feeling over-nurtured, maybe suppressed against your natural desire to be independent. And so with those particular soul wounds that we develop really early on, the soul is constantly trying to balance mind and body, which means that the soul will navigate along with the mind and body you straight into your wounds after you move into that first year 7 cycle. So I'm going to try to explain this pretty clearly so you can really understand. So once you get your initial 7 years out of the way, what you've done is you have downloaded your core belief systems. And maybe you've been in contradiction of those core belief systems because you're an empath. And so you're always going to stay slightly outside of your belief systems, which means that you're going to download them, but you're going to be kind of at war with them, which means, mom and dad were Catholic and you had to go to church every single day, but you never really quite understood why you had to go. And so there's this little inner conflict of maybe there's something wrong with you, or, why couldn't you understand better? Or, you didn't understand why you couldn't quite fully download. You just downloaded at the surface body level their belief systems. And so we download these core belief systems, and then we move about our second year cycle of 7, which is who we are in our society. That's when we start school. That's when we associate ourselves with others, and we are now around different kind of parental figures called teachers and, other things like that. And we're trying to figure out who we are now around those people. And the more damage that has occurred in the first 7-year cycle, the bigger the contrast will be in the second 7-year cycle. Not to mention that you are becoming your own creative force as soon as your puberty starts in, because your puberty is really going to activate your sacral energy, and that's going to start having you question who you are amongst others, and comparison and desire and creativity and and all of this energy that the sacral really starts to move through and develop within you. And so that second 7-year cycle is all about that sacral energy really waking up. And it's usually a pretty difficult time for kids. That's where a lot of self-judgment is seen. They start to demonstrate behavior that is maybe hidden below the surface in their families. Introverted, extroverted, perpetrator, victim energy. It's all what's below the surface that children begin to manifest in their second 7-year cycle. And so basically what we're doing is we are developing ourselves with these wounds, and we're growing as individuals with these wounds that are constantly being opened by society and family, and so they never really have a chance to heal. Yet all the soul's purpose is to connect back to love. And so healing is loving. And so the soul's only mission during that time is to heal thyself. and to connect back with mind and body and be that triad of that complete alchemy process. And so what happens is, as we begin to move into our third 7-year cycle, what is our power center, which is our solar plexus energy, we really begin to seek out relationships where we can assert power and show our power and be expressed through power, which means being able to celebrate our power. And that's where we want to start to kind of create a life for ourselves. You know, that's where we want to maybe get that career or maybe get a home and really be in who we've created ourselves to be up until that point. And if you've noticed, you know, the relationships you've had right off the gate, as soon as you moved away from your, your root family dynamic of the first 7 years, you'll notice that your soul went seeking your wound mate, which means that because you're not aligned with your soul and you're more aligned with your wounding, which would be your body and mind, that the very thing that you're going to be attracted to in the beginning is the very thing that's going to cause you to disengage towards the end, which means that biological, you're going to be attracted to the very thing that is hurting you, because that's what you were taught love looked like. That's what you were taught love was. So you were seeking love from a very pure place, yet it was disassociated. It was, like that mirror that's, you can't really see clearly. It was something that was not clear in the focus of being able to really see what it is you were seeking. And who knows, the thing that your soul really wanted could have been right in front of you your whole life, but that wasn't attractive to you. What was attractive to you was to completely absorb yourself back into the pain of the first 7-year cycle and go through a relationship where you could learn about yourself. That's why the soul is attracted to its wound mates in the beginning. Because again, if you're not aware of what is underneath the surface, you can never bring it to light. You can never heal it. So you're always going to be attracted to the wound mates that are hidden below your surface, which is your subconscious and unconscious triggers. Perfect example of, if I have a father that is emotionally unavailable, I am going to seek the unemotional man. Even though on the surface, I'm going to say, I want someone who sees me, who hears me, who loves me, who nurtures me, and I'm going to seek that. And that's my conscious seeking and desire. But my subconscious, my magnetic force, my energy that is 95% of my point attraction is literally going to be sexually and physically attracted to the very person who is going to wound me again so that I can see where it is that I'm damaged. Because if I cannot see where my damage is, then I can never take my power back. Then I can never heal my root and my sacral or my solar plexus during that process. And so even though it sounds like, oh, I made a mistake and I was in this relationship and it was horrible, the soul never looks at it as any sort of mistake. It looks at it as a chance to become aware. And so it will dive into these relationships full force with thinking that you are, you've never been more in love. You've never been more excited. You've never been, more ready. And, 6 months to 5 years later, you realize that the damage that happened in childhood was just, a surface level compared to what this particular relationship does to us. And so we go through all of that and, possibly we take our power back. And if we don't, we run from that relationship and we dive into the next relationship. And maybe we don't choose any relationship. Maybe we choose at the point in time that it isn't safe for us to be in a relationship and we totally shut down that whole process, and we begin to have that desperate search of love where just nobody shows up. And that's very difficult to understand your blind spots when all you are attracting is no one. And so you're trying to say, okay, so I'm not attracting anyone. What's wrong with me? And so we start to move into comparison and judgment, and we judge the way we look and the way we are and our pasts, and we say, well, that must be it. They must just not be attracted to me. But the truth is that your wounding was so deep that at some moment in time you decided that it wasn't safe for you to ever be hurt like that again, and you literally built a wall around your heart, and hearts are telepathic and they communicate to each other. And so if there's a big, thick wall around your heart, you're not really going to be able to be heard. The signal of your heart is not going to be heard by, your potential mates. And so you're literally become invisible to, potential situations that could possibly hurt you. And if you listen to my last podcast about sabotage, we know that all sabotage comes from a subconscious belief that either you're not safe or you're protecting yourself from something. Even lack of motivation at a core level means that what's the point? It's not going to work out anyways. So I would rather just give up. So it's very much about protection. It's very much about survival. Self-sabotage is always some sort of unconscious way of you not, showing your light, getting hurt, or projecting anything else or anyone else that could hurt you. So I hope this is making sense, because this is what I see a lot of my clients going through right now. I have been through this several times personally, one wound mate to the next. And sometimes I played the victim and sometimes I played the perpetrator, and I didn't learn my lessons. And so, my next level of highest excitement threw me into my next relationship, and until I finally became aware enough of my own wounding to see that all I was doing was projecting and attracting that into another person, and it was feeding back to me and causing me great suffering. And that's why I'm teaching about this now, is because I've just spent about the past year really cleaning all of this wounding up. And, it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy to take responsibility for my delusional visions of what I thought love were. I mean, I was chasing what I believed was love, and what it was actually was what I downloaded as my initial belief system of what love was through my family dynamic, from my collective dynamic. And so you can see now, if you're looking at a relationship where you are not allowed to be authentic, or you are in a relationship right now where it is gaslighting, there's gaslighting going on, or there's manipulation going on, or where you're kind of questioning yourself, am I crazy? What's wrong with me? How come I'm not enough? How come they don't see me? How come they don't hear me? I don't feel nurtured. I don't feel special. Yet you're passionately, possibly in love with this person. You have to realize is that you are in a wound mate situation where your soul is asking you to look within and resolve the conflicts that are going down deep within you. It is so much less about the person that you're with than about how you really see yourself. Because let's face it, if you really saw yourself in a high regard and a high level of self-love, would you ever settle for less than receiving exactly that? Would you ever receive someone who didn't notice you, or put you down for the things that you tried to, or used your empathy against you, or, no matter what you did, it wasn't enough, blindsided you, hurt you, yet you kept running back? This is, if you've listened to my podcast that I've done about twin flames, karmic relationships, this is that kind of heroin chic relationship where it's not good for you, yet it's so intoxicating you just can't quit. And the only time you get clarity is when you get off, when you get off the drug. And people are drugs, trust me. They are so much more influential than any sort of chemical that you could put in your body. And so a lot of times the best thing for the remedy for seeing your relationship for what it actually is space and time. You need to have space and time so that you can basically become yourself again. Because when you are in an intimate situation with someone, you are part you and part them. So it's very hard for you to see who you are outside of them. All you see is what you are together. And you're trying to make that work, because you're literally nothing except love. So every effort that you're putting in is trying to mend, fix, correct, resolve, yet the triggers and the resentment and the humiliation and the shame and guilt and the fear that reside below the surface just keep triggering and triggering and triggering you. And so until you get time and space, you really can't see who you're dealing with and where your wounding is. It's kind of like I say, if you cut your arm can never heal if you keep opening it every single day. You actually have to have the wound, in a place where it can begin to heal, which means that if you're in a relationship, every single day, the wound is being reopened. And so what you're doing is you're in survival mode of not bleeding out. And what you really need is time and space so that wound can be healed and so that you can actually see it for what it really is. And so this is what I'm seeing a lot in our class as we've been doing our sexuality and our intimacy section of our year-long program that we're doing together. And what I'm seeing is people are becoming very enlightened to the dynamics of what's really going on in their relationships, whether it's the relationship that they're having with themselves or the relationship that they're having with a partner. And, and we go back into guilt and shame and obligation. And, maybe this person who you're in a relationship helped you through a really dark night. And so you feel you owe them. And you feel, that you have so much guilt and shame about leaving them behind. And that is one of the reasons why we stay in these wound mate situations, is because we don't feel it's okay to outgrow people. And that's what's wrong with 3D marriage is, you marry someone who you are literally attracted to the point of not even understanding why maybe. And one of you wakes up and realizes the wounding that's going on and starts to take personal responsibility for that, or starts to work through self-love issues, and the other person doesn't. How is that fair that being doesn't evolve past that relationship because of a collective agreement and a piece of paper? And, and so whatever your belief systems are, I would just firmly say that you're not a body or a soul. So the soul is technically never married to anyone except itself. And your journey on this planet is to evolve and awaken and heal and love. And if your situation disallows you to do any of those things, then you are going to feel suffering. You're going to feel stuck, blocked, and alone. And so that's the purpose of a wound mate situation, is so for you to take your power back. Because the damage was done in your root and sacral. And when you move into solar plexus energy, it is all about your power center. It is all about your gift to the world and who you are to the world, and your strength with the world and the strength with yourself, and, bringing self-love from your heart into that solar plexus and projecting it forward. You can't love anyone enough to wake them up. You can't love anyone enough for them to heal themselves. That's their job. You can show them who they are. You can hold light for them. You can hold space for them. You can be in the absence of judgment for them. But sometimes the best thing that wakes them up is for you to remove your empathetic, rescuing, doormat nature. And that's what I always teach about is, being the teacher sometimes is not always about giving someone the right answer. Being the teacher and the example for someone is sometimes about saying, you know what, this relationship isn't loving for me. I can't expand. I can't be myself around you or your family. And so I love myself enough to let go and surrender to this and fully accept what I did to create this relationship, fully accept and move through my own guilt and shame, humiliation and fear and resentment what I have toward this relationship, and really heal this wounding so that I don't retract this into another relationship. And that would be a high level of integrity. But on the other side of the other side of the road is someone left behind. Now, you can never ever leave anyone behind. This is always a choice that is made pre-incarnation, because all relationships are already soul contracted. So you can't leave anyone behind that didn't know they were going to get left behind from a pre-incarnation experience. And hopefully you understand consciousness enough to know that everything that you're moving through right now is already pre-organized, and you are in a process of remembering who you are, and you've left little clues and messages and synchronicities and other people behind so that you could find your way home, your way back to love. And that's the purpose. So part of us remembering is choosing lots of wound mates. Wound mates as a coworker, wound mates as a best friend that's a one-sided friendship who's always there for herself and never there for you. A mom that doesn't understand you. Mother-in-law that's criticizing you. A coworker, a boss, a teacher, your children. These are all wound mates. And any intimate relationship that you've ever had, and intimacy doesn't mean sex. Intimacy means into me I see, is going to reflect back to you your greatest wounds. And that's why this particular year I've jumped into collaboration big time and community, because there's no better way to see where your wounding is than to have lots of relationships with different types of people instead of, living a life of solitude and pretending that you're completely enlightened, because you're enlightened when you can be completely authentic in anywhere, anytime, any place. So if this is making sense, I hope it is, because this is what the root of our class is all about. And the reason why in week 2, we're navigating through our past intimate relationships and taking full responsibility for the guilt, shame, humiliation, guilt, and fear, resentment and fear that we have for each of our partners, because each time that you have unresolved lower energies, emotions, and feelings in a subconscious level, they anchor you to the past. And they reside in the subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind is 95% of your point of attraction. And sub means below the surface. So a lot of times you're not even aware that this is vibrating. And you're going, why do I just keep attracting losers? Or why do I keep attracting this? Or why won't my husband love me? Or why did he leave me? Or, why do I want to leave every day when he's such a great guy? Because he's such a great guy. Why do I want to leave him? Here's a perfect example of a wound mate. Is you came down here to experience freedom. And freedom on all levels. Free of time, money, health, finances, everything. And that was your mission. I'm going to come down here and I'm going to experience freedom. And you move into your first 7-year cycle and, you don't have a lot of freedom. And mom and dad are micromanaging you and maybe over-nurturing you or, whatever the case may be. And so you run into the arms of your first wound mate who has self-love issues and is very clingy and needy. And possibly a wonderful person, possibly on the surface, if anybody else met them, they would think, what a wonderful person. And everything inside of you is asking you to run, because this is contradicting your mission, which is, I want to experience freedom. When someone is very clingy or pushy with their energy, it is coming from a place of they don't know how to express their own love to themselves, and they need you to love them for them. And so the perfect wound mate situation would be someone who wants to be free and someone who doesn't want to be free in a relationship, or someone who comes in with abandonment issues and someone who comes in with commitment issues, because one of you can't commit and one of you feels abandoned. So that would be the perfect example of a wound mate situation. So look at your situations that you're in right now. Are you with anybody like that, where your relationship is contradicting your own authenticity? Because if it is, it's a wound mate. And all you need to do is you need to get some space and time. And you need to sit down with yourself. And you need to ask yourself, how is this relationship serving me? How am I learning about myself? What wounding is this person bringing up with me? What does this relationship remind me of? What buttons does this person push within me? Am I free in this relationship? Am I on purpose in this relationship? Can I move forward on my spiritual journey in this relationship? And if the answer is no to some of those, then what I would give yourself is I would give yourself acceptance that you have manifested a great teacher for yourself. And this teacher is going to help you move back into your power. And just by doing some journaling and some letting go and some self-acceptance and some releasing of the past, you will start to see the relationship that you're in a little bit more clearer. You'll feel cords being cut, and you'll be able to see this relationship for what it was, which was a wound mate. So I hope this made sense. Because I will say that that's what most people are going through, is they're in wound mate situations so that they can see the greatest parts of their own wounding reflected in another person that they love. Someone who is on the surface the love of their life, but underneath, they're not allowed to be themselves. And you are the love of your life. You are the soulmate you seek. So if you're with someone who doesn't allow your soul to sing and, laugh and play and move forward and create and all these things, then you have chosen someone else's wounding over your expansion. So I'm going to leave you with that little nugget to ponder. And then I'll go touch a little bit on a soulmate, because as we move into 5D, we really have made space to have these 5D, fifth dimensional, cosmic, delicious soulmate relationships that are filled with expansion and love and remembrance and connection and creation and healing. Healing is very very quick in these relationships, because instead of learning through pain, we learn through reward. We learn how to be loved by watching someone love us unconditionally. We learn how to trust ourselves by having someone trust us. We learn how to play by having someone allow us to play. We're seen and heard, we're nurtured, we're loved, and all of these aspects. And that would be what a soulmate would be, versus a wound mate. Wound mate is two egos attracted to each other's wounds. A soulmate is two souls attracted to their true authentic selves, where both people are allowed to be the greatest forms of themselves. And in a soulmate relationship, what happens is great expansion, great creativity, great manifestation. Big changes can occur in these relationships. Instead of something breaking down as a byproduct of a relationship, in a soulmate relationship, something is coming together and becoming bigger and better and stronger. It is the exact polar opposite of a wound mate. So a soulmate situation is where you become one, instead of a wound mate situation where you become split in half. And if you feel split in half, that's a wound mate. And if you feel whole and totally the bigger part of yourself as you stand with another, then that is what we're all searching for. That's what we're all moving in the direction of, and that's what we're all wishing for. And it's the wound mates where we get all the collective pieces of ourselves back together. So don't worry if that's where you are. It's your job right now just to become aware and totally accept who you've been and what you've allowed and where you've given your power up, and to move back into grace with yourself, recognize it, and start to work on the past wounds, so that you may get space and time from your intoxicated relationship that you're in, where you have become disassociated from your authentic self, and you have settled for a relationship that contracts you and segregates you, and just really allow yourself to acknowledge that you chose this as a great lesson for yourself, and that this will, set an intention of what it is you would like to create now. But people will be left behind in expansion. People will outgrow jobs and each other and their cities and their towns and their families. And that is part of our evolutionary process, is that if we can become aware, we are going to grow. We are going to expand. We are going to create past what we've created last week. And it's okay for you to totally indulge in the expansion of yourself. And the two ways you will sabotage yourself. Okay, I just want to leave you with this. The two reasons why you will not get out of your wound mate situation. Number one, you're afraid to leave someone behind. You feel guilt and shame. You feel responsibility. You feel obligation to that soul. You feel it's your fault somehow that you don't love them, or whatever the case may be. So you will sabotage all of your healing around this particular relationship, and you will stay in the wound mate situation where it's really just wounding yourself. The second reason you will sabotage yourself, or the second way you will sabotage yourself, is you're afraid of your own greatness. And you know that leaving this relationship is going to put you into the unknown, and you're going to be the center of your attention again. And you don't have anyone to blame or judge or complain about. And you know you're going to be on your own. And maybe that feels scary. Or the last time you were totally authentic, you got humiliated or judged for it. And so you worry about being bigger than you were. You worry about leaving this relationship and not being able to find anyone who is as good as the person you're leaving behind. This is all the sabotaging energy of ego that keeps you stuck in the relationships that you settled for. And I just want to leave you with this, because I want you to look at the reason why you're not leaving, or the reason why you're not healing, or, having that conversation with your partner and telling the truth about how you feel, and maybe working it into a soulmate relationship, because there is a probability that if you really were able to speak your truth from a compassionate way and told the person that you loved what you were going through, and they happened to receive it and were willing to do the work, then this relationship can heal together. I'm not saying that it's infinitely going to, you're infinitely going to grow apart and leave each other behind. I'm not saying that, because I have seen this. I've seen this in my own class happen. And I've seen it move from a total wound mate situation where they took time and space, they self-reflected, they worked on self-love, they worked on past relationships and wounding, and happened to come back together and turned it all around and are now actually thriving together, moving forward together, expanding together, and they're not carrying the anchors and resentments of the past into their now relationships. And so I have seen it. It is possible, and anything is possible. If you can imagine it, it's real. But I wanted to leave you guys with this today because this is really collectively going down. And if you look at our two American candidates that are, up for president election, they are the perfect wound mates. They are the perfect example of wound mated relationships. And it's funny to watch. But I will remind you guys that there's some other candidates out there that have really good messages. And, if you look at the polls, even the person you don't even know their name has 20% of the votes. So just remember that there are other people that you can vote for that actually stand for something, just don't have billions of dollars to back their crazy schemes. So just wanted to leave you guys with that and let you know that there is solutions when you stop looking at the problem. And there are ideas when you stop believing in your past. And there is assistance and help and guidance. And I will tell you that when you close your eyes and you imagine the most amazing relationship for yourself that you could ever dream up, that is not imagination, that you are actually pinpointing that individual on your particular timeline and you are feeling them. They exist. And it just comes down to how much you can trust and love yourself to align with that person that is absolutely seeking the best in you, which means that you cannot close your eyes and imagine anything that doesn't exist for you. It is impossible because all you have is the Akashic records and the field of potential to choose from. And in the field of potential, anything that you can imagine, anything that you can focus on and become a vibrational match to is yours for the taking. It's yours for the experiencing. Your job is to stop settling because you don't think it exists. And I know it exists. I've seen it. I've felt it. I have it. And so we all can have it. And I just wanted to leave you with that because your life should be the fairy tale that you've always wanted to. All right. I will see you all in class or online, and I hope this helped today.
Thank you for joining Jessica on this transcending episode. Email us directly at jessicaalstrom@gmail.com with your questions and personal challenges you would like addressed on the show. And join us on next week's podcast. You are not alone, and remember, your higher self speaks to you through people, places, circumstances, and events.